My daughter recently quit her job at the bank and finally opened the farm-to-table restaurant she had always dreamed of. On the day of her grand opening celebration, I went to the restaurant and saw her standing there alone, looking dejected. Her former colleagues were supposed to come and celebrate with her today. The reservation for 30 people today was cancelled by Sam. As she said this, her voice trembled and tears filled her eyes. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I quickly grabbed my phone and called the bank where she used to work. "Get Mr. Iverson, the president of the bank, on the phone right now." A fire of anger ignited in my heart. My name is Keith Ashford. I've taken early retirement and now enjoy a carefree second chapter of life. More than 10 years ago, I lost my wife, and since then, my only family has been my daughter, Macy. Watching Macy chase her dreams has become my greatest joy in life. This morning, I received a rare phone call from her. "Hello? Dad? I need a favor." "Is that okay?" "Of course." "What's up? Can you come with me to check out a property? I have the day off, and I really want you to see it with me." "Oh, did you find a good one?" "Yes. A restaurant property just became available. The location is great, and I won't have to do much remodeling." "That sounds perfect." "Okay, I'll get ready. Give me a few minutes." I hung up and started getting ready to head out. Opening a restaurant was not just Macy's dream, it was also my late wife's. Seeing Macy take steps toward realizing that dream brings me immense happiness. I met up with Macy in front of the property. "Dad! Over here!" Macy waved enthusiastically, flashing a radiant smile. "Thanks for coming, Dad. If it's your request, there's no reason for me to refuse." "So, this is the property you mentioned over the phone?" "Yep. It's in a quiet area, but the location is accessible, and there's a farm nearby." "Isn't it great?" "It sure is." "All right, let's check it out." "You got the key from the realtor, right?" "Yep." "Let's go in." Macy unlocked the door and stepped inside. And I followed her in. The scent of wood gently filled the air. Wow, this is pretty nice. The space was small but cozy, with a warm wooden interior that left a strong impression. "So, this was a restaurant before?" "Exactly. The previous owner retired because of age, so it recently became available." "I see. It does have an older feel, but that adds charm. It's well maintained and clean." I ran my hand over the counter, testing its sturdy build. "The interior looks great. With a few tweaks, you could start business right away." "Do you think so? Then I guess I'll go for it." Macy, now standing behind the counter, beamed as she walked toward me. "It's finally happening, I'm going to start my own place." "Do you think Mom's watching over me?" "She absolutely is, Macy. She's proud of you, and so am I. Go for it. I've got your back." "Thanks, Dad." Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and her smile was bright. Seeing her like this filled me with pride. After the property tour, we decided to relax at a nearby cafe. As we sipped coffee, memories of the past came flooding back. Macy was in middle school when her mother passed away. Even after being diagnosed with a terminal illness, my wife remained the bright, steadfast center of our family. Her dream was to one day own her own restaurant. Back then, I was just a humble office worker, saving up for her dream by working together as a dual-income household. I did everything I could to make her dream come true. Her dream of having her own restaurant gradually became my dream as well. As a family, we often talked about our dreams, firmly believing that one day they would come true. "Dad, are you okay?" Macy's voice brought me back to the present. "Huh? Oh, I was just reminiscing, thinking about your mom." I offered a faint smile and sipped my coffee to mask my emotions. Seeing this, Macy smiled gently at me. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll make Mom's dream come true. Thank you, Macy. She'd be so proud. When Macy was working hard at the local bank to save up for the restaurant, I often offered to help her financially. But she always said, I want to achieve it on my own, and refused my help. So, I decided to respect her wishes and just watch over her. Honestly, her stubbornness when she sets her mind to something reminds me of myself. You've done so well on your own, Macy. It's thanks to you, Dad. You've always been there for me. I might rely on you more in the future, but when I do, I hope you won't mind. Of course. Lean on me anytime. I'd do anything for you. Thanks, Dad. I'm counting on you. Macy nodded with a cheerful smile. Looking at her happy expression, I silently vowed to dedicate the rest of my life to supporting her. Not long after, Macy quit the bank and began preparing earnestly to open her restaurant. In the days leading up to the opening, Macy worked on perfecting her dishes inside the soon-to-be restaurant. From the small kitchen, a delightful aroma filled the air. Dad, it's ready. Macy brought out several dishes and placed them in front of me, where I was seated at the counter. The main dishes, featuring seasonal vegetables, meats, and seafood sourced daily from nearby farms and markets, included many of the recipes my wife had excelled at. Go ahead, give it a try. Well, it looks flawless. Let's see how it tastes. I reached for the freshly made seafood galette. With the first bite, a nostalgic flavor filled my mouth. How is it, Dad? It's unmistakably your mom's cooking. Really? I'm so glad. Macy let out a sigh of relief and smiled. I couldn't help but smile back. You've recreated Mom's recipes so perfectly, Macy. You're already a great chef. Thank you, Dad. Being able to replicate Mom's cooking makes me so happy. Now that you've given it your seal of approval, I feel confident. Good. Keep cherishing this flavor. Mom would want that. Yeah, I will. And Dad, make sure to come by the restaurant often to eat, okay? Of course. Getting to eat your cooking every day would be the best gift for me. Then I'd better keep improving my skills for you, too. Macy laughed a little shyly. In that moment, her smile looked so much like my late wife's. I felt a pang of bittersweet emotion in my chest and took a sip of the wine Macy had prepared to distract myself. Hey, Dad. What is it? Can I have a glass too? Of course. I tilted the bottle and poured wine into the glass Macy held out. We clinked glasses lightly, and Macy took a small sip of the wine. Ah, it's delicious. So, Macy, you finally come to appreciate the taste of good wine, huh? Of course, Dad. How old do you think I am? No matter how old you get, you'll always be my little girl. Geez, you're always treating me like a kid. Macy pouted slightly, looking mildly annoyed. But I couldn't help it. Even if Macy gets married, has children, and becomes a mother herself, she'll always be my daughter. One day, as the restaurant's opening drew near, I got a call from Macy. Hello? Dad? I need your advice on something. Sure, what's up? Well, what's the best way to handle a big order of ingredients? Do you think it's okay to suddenly change plans with the supplier? What's wrong? Are the current arrangements not enough? Yeah, actually. Macy's voice sounded puzzled, yet somewhat light and bouncy. It didn't seem like bad news, so I waited patiently for her to continue. The folks from the bank are throwing a farewell and opening party for me at the restaurant. About 30 people are coming. That's amazing, but with 30 people, you'll have to reserve the whole restaurant. Yeah, that's the plan. I'm thinking of making it a pre-opening event too. That's a great idea. Alright, Macy, make a list of the ingredients you'll need, and I'll help negotiate with the supplier. Really? Thanks, Dad. Can you come by the restaurant later? Of course. I'm free today, so I'll head over right away. I hung up and got ready to head to Macy's restaurant. When I arrived and opened the door, Macy greeted me with a big smile. "You're quick, Dad." "Yeah, so, do you have the ingredient list ready?" "Yep. Here's the list, and these are the contacts for the new suppliers I'm planning to work with." "Got it. Hang tight for a bit." Taking the list from her, I called the supplier. A friendly-sounding middle-aged man answered and immediately agreed to the changes without any issues. "All set, Macy." The supplier was very accommodating and said to feel free to reach out if you need anything. "That's great. Thanks so much, Dad. Anything else you need help with?" "I've got the car today, so I can take you wherever you need to go." "Really? In that case, could you take me to the store where I want to pick up some kitchen equipment?" "Of course. Just give me a second, I'll pull the car around." Feeling a sense of purpose in Macy relying on me so much today, I moved my car from the nearby lot to the front of the restaurant. I honked lightly, and Macy came out, hopping into the passenger seat. "Thanks so much for today, Dad. You've been a huge help." "Anytime. Your mom's dream of running a restaurant became my dream too, you know." "Yeah, then I'll count on you more from now on." "Please do." Glancing at Macy's cheerful expression, I began driving slowly. After a while, Macy started giggling softly. "Hee, I'm surprised." "Surprised by what?" "Well, the one who told me about the party for my opening and farewell was Sam, my boss. He was always scolding me. So I never expected him to do something like this for me." "Macy, your hard work must have paid off. Be grateful and accept it with an open heart." "Yeah, you're right. Okay, I'll give it my all to leave a lasting impression, even on Sam." "Yes, I'm rooting for you too, Macy." I felt relieved knowing that Macy seemed to have been fortunate with the people at her previous workplace. Seeing her cheerful smile, I found myself eagerly anticipating the opening day of her restaurant, my heart racing with excitement. And then, the big day finally arrived. Macy, will she be okay? Although Macy had nailed me beforehand by saying, "Dad doesn't have to do anything," I couldn't sit still at home and made a phone call to Macy. After a few rings, Macy, who seemed busy with preparations, answered. "Dad? What's wrong? Did something happen?" "No, nothing's wrong here." "Macy, are you sure you don't need any help?" "I'm fine. If I can't handle this alone, I won't survive in this business. So, Dad, please relax at home today, okay? I'll call you after it's all over." "I see, but call me right away if something comes up." "I will, don't worry." "Thanks, Dad. Bye for now." She ended the call abruptly. Still, I couldn't shake off my worry. Thinking about Macy managing everything alone, I felt restless and uneasy. "No. I can't. I have to go." Murmuring to myself, I hurriedly got ready and left the house. I got in the car and drove straight to Macy's restaurant. When I arrived, the area around the restaurant was still quiet, with no customers in sight. Maybe I came too early, but people will show up soon enough. Thinking I could lend a hand and also greet her former colleagues, I decided to step inside. "Macy, are you here?" "Sorry, I couldn't help but come." "Macy?" Inside, the restaurant was empty, and Macy was standing alone behind the counter. "Macy, what's wrong? Did something happen?" I called out to her, and she slowly turned to face me. "Dad." Her voice trembled, and tears welled up in her eyes. I rushed over to her side instinctively. "Macy, what's going on? Weren't your former co-workers supposed to be here today?" Something was clearly amiss. The seats were already set with large platters of food, the preparation seemingly perfect, yet no one had arrived. What happened? It had to be something serious. When I pressed her for an answer, Macy began speaking haltingly, tears streaming down her face. Just now. Sam called. Sam? Oh, your former manager, right? The one who made the reservation for the party? Yeah, but he said the party is cancelled. He told me no one wants to celebrate a loser like me who quit the bank, and then he hung up. Unable to hold it in any longer, Macy broke down in tears. What? He said that? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all the effort Macy had put into her preparations, this was a cruel and unjust blow. A fire of anger ignited in my heart. Macy, wait here. I took out my cell phone and called the headquarters of the bank where Macy used to work. Dad? What are you doing? Just leave this to me for now, I said firmly, silencing her worried protests. After a few rings, a young receptionist answered the phone. Hello. Could you connect me to Mr. Iverson, the president of the bank? May I ask who's calling? The receptionist's tone grew cautious, and she asked again, sounding slightly wary. I paused for a moment and cleared my throat deliberately. Apologies. My name is Keith Ashford. Could you please connect me to Mr. Henry Iverson, the bank president? The moment I said that, her attitude shifted dramatically. Mr. Ashford. My deepest apologies. I'll connect you to President Iverson immediately. Her flustered reaction was clear, even over the phone. Please hold on a moment, she said, her voice hurried, before the hold music began to play. Not long after, a familiar voice came on the line. Henry Iverson, the president of the bank where Macy used to work and an old friend of mine from our college days, was on the other end of the line. Keith? What's going on? It's rare for you to call the bank directly like this. I've got some things to discuss, Henry. You sound upset. What's the matter, Keith? Henry seemed to pick up on the anger in my voice right away. I took a deep breath to steady myself before speaking. It's serious. I need to talk to you in person. I'll send you the location, my daughter's restaurant. Come immediately. Understood. I'll be there soon. After confirming his response, I hung up. Dad, what was that about? Are you saying Mr. Iverson is coming here? Macy asked, clearly surprised. Don't worry about it, Macy. Let me handle this. I'll explain everything later. Reassuring her as best as I could, I sat and waited quietly for Henry to arrive. About half an hour later, the door to the restaurant opened, and Henry appeared, slightly out of breath. It was clear he had rushed to get here. Keith, what's going on? What's going on? I echoed, standing up. Your employee canceled a 30-person reservation at the last minute, Henry. 30 people. I know the headquarters and the branch may not always communicate perfectly, but you mean to tell me you didn't know anything about this? What? Henry's eyes widened in shock. He immediately turned to Macy, who was standing behind the counter, still processing the situation. This is completely unacceptable. I sincerely apologize for what happened. Mr. Iverson, how do you know my dad? Macy asked, her confusion evident as she looked between the two of us. Well, I said, deciding it was time to reveal what I'd kept quiet for so long. Henry and I go way back, we were college classmates. What? Really? Macy's voice rose in surprise. Henry smiled warmly at her. You might not remember, but I've met you a few times when you were a little girl. Wait, does that mean? Macy trailed off, her expression tightening as if a sudden realization had struck her. But Henry shook his head reassuringly. No, your position at the bank was entirely your own doing. It was purely coincidental, and your success there was all because of your talent. Please don't worry about that. Oh. I see. Macy said, exhaling a small sigh of relief. But another question seemed to trouble her, and she tilted her head with a puzzled expression. But Would you really come all this way just because you're old friends? Ha ha. That's not the only reason. Keith is a significant figure for our bank. What? Dad, what does he mean? Macy turned to me, clearly bewildered. I took a deep breath, preparing to finally disclose what I kept hidden. Macy, there's something I haven't told you. A long time ago, I ran a business. I was the CEO. After I married your mom, I sold the company to help fund her dream. Since then, I've been managing investments in various fields. And the main bank I've worked with all these years is Henry's. What? Really? I had no idea. Macy stared at me, her eyes wide with astonishment. I said, offering her an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, Macy, the truth is, I could have provided the funds for the restaurant's operations right away. But you chose your own path and accomplished all of this through your own hard work. I'm proud of you, Macy. Dad. Macy shook her head gently and gave me a smile in return. Thank you, Dad, for always watching over me. They say struggles when you're young are worth it. I think because of those experiences, I've been able to come this far. But, to have such a big failure right from the start. As if remembering everything, her face was once again clouded with sadness. I shot a sharp glance at Henry, who immediately leaned forward, looking at Macy with concern. Macy, I'm deeply sorry for this. Could you tell me the name of the employee who canceled the reservation? Oh, yes. It was Sam, my former branch manager. He's the one who made the reservation too. I see. Henry nodded thoughtfully, a perceptive look crossing his face. I had also begun to sense something suspicious after hearing Macy's account. Henry, what do you think? Honestly, I smell something fishy. Funny, I think so too, he replied. What do you mean? Macy asked, her voice tinged with worry. Henry gave a small smile. Let's get to the bottom of this. Macy, would you mind if I called him here right now? What? But? I mean, Macy, it's okay. Let's trust Henry on this, I said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Hesitant, Macy looked at me, then gave a small nod. Okay, if you say so, Dad. Great, then it's decided, Henry said with a calm smile as he started dialing. He was calling Macy's former branch. Hello, this is Henry. Tell Sam to come to my location immediately. Let him know it's Macy's restaurant. This is urgent. So please make it happen quickly. With an authoritative tone, Henry ended the call. Not long after, the restaurant door opened, and a man appeared. It was Sam. His face was tense, with beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Sam. Macy looked uneasy seeing him, but Sam seemed too flustered about being summoned by Henry to notice. Mr. Iverson. What are you doing here? Sam, I need to ask you something. Why did you cancel the reservation for this restaurant today? Well, Under Henry's piercing gaze, Sam swallowed hard. Actually, several employees who were supposed to attend reported feeling unwell, and, we had no choice but to cancel. Sam's face is dripping with sweat as he tries to escape Henry's gaze, and I am convinced this bastard is lying. Henry seemed to reach the same conclusion, his voice rising in exaggerated surprise. That's terrible. In that case, I should personally visit these sick employees to offer my regards. Sam, could you give me a complete list of their names? No, that won't be necessary. It's really nothing serious. Oh? Then there was no reason to cancel the entire reservation, was there? And surely not all 30 attendees fell ill? Well, Sam's stammering was so evident it was infuriating to listen to. I sighed deeply and turned to Henry. Henry, enough. This is getting us nowhere. You're right. Okay, let's get confirmation from someone else. Macy, can you call one of your trusted former colleagues? Put it on speaker so we can all hear. What? Oh, okay. Still hesitant, Macy pulled out her phone and started dialing. After a few rings, a cheerful woman's voice came through the phone. Macy? It's rare for you to call. What's up? Natalie, I'm sorry to bother you suddenly, but I need to ask you something. Sure, what is it? The woman Macy called Natalie sounded completely unaware of the situation. At that moment, I became certain of something. It seemed Macy also started to understand what was going on. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Macy nervously began to speak. Well, there was supposed to be a party today at my restaurant with everyone from the branch. Did you know about it, Natalie? A party? No, I haven't heard anything about that. Wait, what? A party at your restaurant today? You're kidding. Who's organizing this? It was Sam who made the reservation, but he said everyone who was supposed to attend got sick, so it had to be canceled. What? That's ridiculous. No one's called in sick today, and everyone's perfectly healthy. Unbelievable. What on earth is Sam thinking? This is absurd. Her indignant voice echoed through the restaurant. I let out a heavy sigh, muttering I knew it, as Henry shrugged in exasperation. Beside us, Sam shrank like a frog cornered by a snake. Just then, another voice came through the phone. Macy. Can you hear me? It's Sean. A young man's voice this time. Sean? Judging by the conversation, he seemed to be one of Macy's colleagues. Sounding urgent, he called out to Macy from the other end of the line. Natalie and I are coming to the restaurant right now. Wait for us. Hey, wait. Sean. Sorry, Macy, we'll be there soon. With the sound of commotion on the other end, the call abruptly ended. Natalie. Sean. Macy whispered their names as she teared up and sank to the floor, overwhelmed. I'm glad for you, Macy. Yeah. I'm so relieved. I thought everyone hated me. Supporting her gently by the shoulders, I patted her back softly a few times. Before long, the restaurant door burst open with a loud bang. Macy. Are you okay? Sean. And Natalie, too. Macy, I'm so sorry. We were all planning to celebrate your opening after you settled in, but I had no idea this would happen. Out of breath, the two hurried to Macy's side, sparing only a brief, sharp glare at Sam, who was cowering in the corner. By the way, what is Sam doing here? When the topic of celebrating Macy's opening came up, he said he wouldn't participate and we should do whatever we wanted. Sam, care to explain yourself? Both of them turned on Sam with stern voices, making him squirm uncomfortably under their scrutiny. Finally, he gave in and began to speak. Well, I was just messing around. Macy's dream of running her own place seemed so naive, so I thought I'd give her a dose of reality. I just wanted to show her how the real world works. Sam's words came out as if he were trying to justify his actions. At that moment, something inside me snapped. What did you just say? I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, my anger boiling over. You think you can teach someone about reality? Any dream that's achieved becomes reality. Don't you get that? Ah. Dad. Stop, please. Macy stepped in to stop me just as I grabbed Sam by the collar and raised my fist. Dad. I'm okay now, it's fine. Macy. Macy's right, Keith. Calm down. Sorry. I released Sam from my grip, prompted by Henry's calm but firm rebuke. Henry sighed, a mix of exasperation and relief on his face. Macy, I'm sorry for all the trouble caused. Take this, please. Henry pulled out a check from his pocket and handed it to Macy. Even from a distance, it was clear the amount was substantial. Macy immediately shook her head, flustered. I can't accept this. It's far too much. It's fine. Consider any extra as my contribution to celebrate your opening. Or, is it not enough? Henry smiled and placed a second check, equally substantial, on top of the first, gently but insistently pushing both into Macy's hands. I'll organize a proper celebration for your grand opening another day, hosted by me. For now, why don't you invite family and friends to enjoy the food and mark this day? It would be a shame to let the dishes go to waste. Henry then turned to Sam. Oh, and Sam, you're coming with me. We'll have a little chat. Yes, sir. Henry's smile remained, but the unspoken authority behind it was impossible to ignore. Well, we'll be off now, he said, escorting a defeated-looking Sam out of the restaurant. Wow, Mr. Iverson is incredible. Hey, Macy. Since he suggested it, can I call my husband to come to the restaurant now? Of course. Macy, I'll reach out to some of our colleagues from other branches. It's been ages since we've all gathered. Everyone would love to come. Yeah, let's do it. Thank you, Sean. Surrounded by her former co-workers, Macy's smile began to return, and I felt a wave of relief. I'm so glad for you, Macy. I murmured to myself, lightly touching the wedding ring still on my left hand. If my wife were here, she'd surely be standing beside me, watching over Macy with pride and love. A few days later, thanks to Henry's initiative, many people from the bank gathered at Macy's restaurant for a proper celebration. The restaurant was alive with laughter and lively conversations. Macy, this is incredible. I can't believe you've opened such a beautiful restaurant. My husband came by the other day and loved it. He's planning to bring his colleagues next time. Really? That's wonderful. Thank you so much. The food here is so comforting. I'm sure you'll have regulars in no time. I'll probably become one myself. Thank you, Sean. If you do come, I'll make sure to treat you to something special. Macy chatted happily with her former colleagues, her joy palpable. Sitting a little away from the lively group, I sipped my drink. Watching Macy's radiant smile warmed my heart. Hey, you enjoying yourself? Henry suddenly appeared beside me, holding out his glass. Yeah, thanks to you. That's good to hear. We clinked glasses lightly, and Henry drained his wine in one go, before placing a hand on my shoulder. Keith, I really am sorry about what happened the other day. Don't worry about it. I admit I might have overreacted a bit. But when it comes to Macy, I can't help myself. I knew I was overly protective of Macy, but I couldn't help it. She's my one and only daughter, more precious to me than life itself. Smiling wryly at my own sentimentality, I downed another sip of my drink. So, what happened to Sam afterward? He left the bank. After all this, he'd made too many enemies, I think. Left? You mean he wasn't fired? Curious, I asked, and Henry chuckled lightly, his tone playful. Who knows? What do you think? Though his smile was calm, there was something inscrutable in Henry's gaze. I wouldn't put anything past this man, but I decided to leave it at that. Well, it's fine. In the end, Macy's restaurant opened successfully, and everyone has gathered here. Thank you, Henry. Oh, don't mention it. I just set the stage. It's all thanks to Macy's hard work. You're absolutely right. We raised our glasses, sharing a laugh together. The warm atmosphere of the restaurant resonated with the laughter of friends and family. I found myself wishing this moment could last forever. Time passed, and Macy's restaurant grew more and more successful. Henry, along with Macy's former colleagues, began frequenting the restaurant, often bringing family and friends. The place was always bustling with customers. In the evenings, the restaurant was filled with lively conversations and laughter, creating a cozy and inviting ambience. Among Macy's regular visitors were Natalie and Sean, who seemed particularly close to her. They often shared drinks with us, becoming familiar faces at the restaurant. Wait, so Macy's dream of running her own restaurant was also your late wife's dream? Natalie exclaimed, pouring me another drink. And mine, too. Macy made that dream come true, and I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you, Macy. I turned to Macy, who was standing behind the counter, her face softly illuminated by the warm lights. I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. And Natalie, Sean, thank you both for coming so often. Sean, you're practically here every day. Aren't you? Macy grinned as she refilled Sean's empty glass with beer. He scratched his head sheepishly. Well, yeah, the food here is just so good. Thanks. It's all from recipes Mom taught me. Right, Dad? Yep, that's right. I nodded and glanced at Sean, who was looking intently at Macy. When I glanced at Natalie, she shrugged playfully, as if confirming my suspicions. Ah, so that's how it is, I thought, feeling a twinge of mixed emotions. Still, I told myself it was a good thing. Sean, I called out. Yes, sir. He responded quickly, turning toward me with a nervous expression. Seeing his flustered face, I couldn't help but recall the time I met my wife's parents for the first time. Suddenly, I felt like rooting for him. Well, do your best. I'll tell you this, Macy's not the most perceptive in that regard. You'll have your work cut out for you. I'll do my best. Sean seemed to catch my meaning and nodded with determination, his face turning red. What a straightforward and decent young man, I thought, taking another sip of beer in good spirits. Seeing Macy's dream come true, supported by so many wonderful people, filled my heart with joy. The warm lights of the restaurant flickered gently. It felt almost as if my late wife was watching over us, and I swallowed the tears that threatened to well up. Hey, are you watching? Macy made her dream come true. I silently spoke to my wife in my heart as I touched the wedding ring on my left hand. 100 guests for a banquet, suddenly cancelled? The sound of despair in her voice rivaled the relentless downpour outside. At the entrance, Sarah, the owner, stood frozen in disbelief. Derek, our resort might not make it anymore. Her trembling voice conveyed the gravity of the situation. Cedric, my boss, had promised a massive booking. But on the day of the event, it was abruptly cancelled. The woman before me looked shattered, fragile from the cruel turn of events. A fire of anger surged within me. That man, he never intended to hold a banquet in the first place. All the hard work of our staff, the large stock of supplies, it was all about to go to waste. In that moment, a plan began to form in my mind. Leave it to me. I'll figure something out. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Hello, this is an emergency. Please gather right away. To save this resort, my mission for justice was about to begin. My name is Derek, 32 years old. Until yesterday, I was stationed overseas, but now, here I stand on American soil. Breathing in the air of my hometown, it evoked a mix of nostalgia and a fresh sense of purpose. Manhattan, New York, surrounded by towering skyscrapers. Amid the glass and steel structures stood an eye-catching European-style building. Its robust exterior, over 100 years old, reflected a rich history and tradition. Standing before its grand entrance, my heart raced with both familiarity and tension. I'm back. I whispered softly, letting the words dissolve into the crisp morning air. American Travel Solutions Incorporated. A giant in the travel industry, connecting people with everything from expansive resorts to budget accommodations. For over a century since its founding, this prestigious company has been a leader in American tourism. I was about to set foot in its headquarters for the first time in 5 years. As I stepped into the lobby, a wall of breathtaking photographs greeted me, showcasing scenic landscapes from across the states. Majestic mountains, charming streetscapes, and serene islands floating on azure seas. Delivering these experiences to people. That was our mission. Riding the elevator, I took a deep breath. I thought back to the day I received my overseas assignment 5 years ago. Back then, I was filled with both anxiety and anticipation. And now, with those experiences in hand, I was standing here once again. 14th floor, new business development department. The mechanical voice announced as the doors slid open. Stepping into the department floor, I immediately noticed an unusual atmosphere. The employees' gazes were all fixed on one person. Standing at the center of attention was a middle-aged man in a suit. "Are you Derek?" His deep, calm voice reached me. A slim build, neatly groomed mustache, and piercing eyes that seemed to appraise me from head to toe. "Yes, I'm Derek. I've just returned from my overseas assignment today." Straightening my back, I replied with as much composure as I could muster. The man crossed his arms and furrowed his brows. The displeasure on his face was unmistakable. "I'm Cedric. I'm the head of this department. I've heard about your background. Let me see, a graduate of some insignificant public high school. Wasn't it?" Cedric's words caused a murmur among the others. Savoring their reactions, Cedric smirked faintly. "Yes, that's correct." I tried to remain composed, but a storm of emotions churned within me. Despite working for this major company, the fact that I came from a rural public high school was a part of who I was. I wasn't ashamed of it. In fact, I took pride in how far I had come from those humble beginnings. But Cedric's attitude clearly looked down on me. "Interesting. I don't know what you were doing overseas, but I doubt you accomplished much. Can someone with a public school education even understand the words in our marketing materials? Good grief. HR really sent us quite a burden this time. You see, this new business development department is said to be reserved for the company's elite. Yet somehow they saw fit to assign someone as unimpressive as you." Cedric's words were sharp, piercing my heart like thorns. Still, I kept my composure. "I'll do my best to contribute." For a moment, Cedric's face registered surprise. But it quickly disappeared, replaced by his usual condescending smirk. "Doing your best, huh? I suppose that's all a country bumpkin can say. Very well, I'll have you handle some menial tasks. Filing paperwork. Restocking snacks, those should be within your capabilities." His words brought a tense silence over the entire floor. "Understood. I'll give it my all," I responded, my voice unexpectedly steady. Cedric sneered down at me before turning on his heel. "All right, then. Let's get to work. I have an important business meeting now. You'll come along as my bag carrier." For a moment, I was taken aback by Cedric's sudden order. But what intrigued me even more was the mention of this unexpected meeting. "Yes, understood," I replied, masking my confusion. "I just came back from overseas, and suddenly they want me to accompany them to a business meeting without any preparation or explanation?" Cedric, indifferent to my unease, strode briskly toward the elevator. I hurried to follow him. Inside the elevator, Cedric finally spoke about the meeting. "Our client today is Celestial Springs, a luxury resort in Colorado. We're meeting with its owner, Sarah." The mention of her name sent my heart racing. Sarah? Could it really be her? Memories flooded back in an instant. The kind older girl who supported me during middle school. My first love. "What are you standing there for? Get on." Cedric's voice brought me back to myself and I hurriedly got into the elevator. I tried desperately to keep my composure so that he doesn't realize how upset I am. As the elevator began its descent, my thoughts churned. A reunion after 5 years. And in a situation like this. How should I face Sarah when I see her again? But a stronger emotion rose within me: anticipation and joy at the chance to meet her again, and hope that I might finally fulfill a promise I made long ago. "Hey, what are you daydreaming about?" During the meeting, make sure you take proper notes. That much, at least, should be within your ability. Cedric's cold voice snapped me back to reality. "Yes, I'll do it," I answered quietly but with firm determination. Today might be the turning point of my life. I could feel it clearly. I was tasked with driving the company car, gripping the wheel with a mix of nerves and focus. The scenery outside the window gradually shifted from the urban landscape to lush, natural surroundings. As I drove, my thoughts drifted back to Sarah and the Celestial Springs resort where she was likely waiting. It was when I was 16. Autumn of my sophomore year in high school. The season of vibrant fall foliage. I still remember the moment my homeroom teacher, Mr. Waters, grabbed my shoulder with a panicked expression as I entered the classroom. "Derek, there's been a call from the hospital. Your parents, they've been in an accident." "What?" My parents had died in a car accident. That very morning, I had just said goodbye to them. The last I saw of them were two fleeting images: my father adjusting his hair in the mirror, and my mother, unusually excited as she hurried to prepare for an outing with a friend. "I'm dressing up today." "Your father's driving me. It's almost like a date," she had said with a shy smile. To which my father, in his usual brusque way, replied, "I have work, and you're just going to meet your friend at the station." Their typical playful banter had made me roll my eyes, responding half-heartedly before rushing out myself. "Derek, be a good boy. Take care." Those warm parting words now haunted me. Why hadn't I answered properly? After their passing, I was taken in by my uncle and aunt who lived nearby. But what awaited me was far from a nurturing environment. "Derek, is dinner ready yet? Did you fold the laundry? We're supporting you, the least you can do is help out." Their words echoed daily. I was burdened with all the household chores, barely finding time to study. One day, I discovered my online banking statement, managed by my uncle, showing a balance of 0. Every cent had been used up by them. Though I had tried to convince myself they were taking care of me, that revelation solidified my resolve. I needed to leave that house as soon as possible. From that day, I decided to forego college and enter the workforce right after high school. I wouldn't rely on anyone anymore. But the price of that decision was steep. Perhaps realizing my intention to leave, or maybe they had never intended to support my education, their treatment of me worsened. Even making my own meals became forbidden. Still, I found ways to survive, nibbling on sausages under the guise of cooking for them, tasting the food as a pretext to eat. But that meager sustenance wasn't enough. And then, Sarah became my savior. "Derek, you must be hungry again, aren't you?" Her gentle voice was always accompanied by a warm plate of aromatic beef stew, rich with wine and tender meat. Sarah, a young owner of the Celestial Springs Resort, had always been kind to me. The resort, close to my family's home, was a frequent getaway for us. During those visits, Sarah, being relatively close in age, treated me like a little brother. After my parents passed, that kindness didn't waver. While most people around me only showed superficial concern, Sarah's kindness was genuine. "Derek, you're doing great, but don't push yourself too hard. You need to eat properly," she'd say, her eyes filled with concern as she looked at my frail figure. Her warmth nearly brought tears to my eyes. "Sarah, thank you." I expressed my deepest gratitude with those words. Sarah gently patted my head. "It's fine. You're like a little brother to me, Derek." Her words slowly thawed the icy layer around my heart. From that day on, I started stopping by Celestial Springs after school, as it was just a short walk from the bus stop near my old home. Despite her busy schedule, Sarah always made time to feed me. Sometimes, she even helped me with my homework. "Derek, what's your dream for the future?" When Sarah asked me this one day, I answered without hesitation. I want to be like you, someone who can help others. Sarah's expression showed a mix of surprise and joy upon hearing my answer. I see. But to do that, you need to take care of yourself first. I nodded fervently, her words etching themselves into my heart. Over time, my feelings for Sarah grew into something special. Her kindness, warmth, and strength became precious to me. Was this what people called a first love? With those feelings hidden deep in my chest, I lived my life with determination. Sarah's presence was my hope and my reason to keep going. Derek, we're almost there. Cedric's voice snapped me back to reality. Through the car window, the familiar mountain ranges came into view. It had been 5 years since I last saw Sarah, just before my overseas assignment. Although this reunion was unexpected, my heart pounded with anticipation. As we pulled up to the entrance of Celestial Springs, the familiar scent of the place wafted through the air. But along with that nostalgic aroma came an undertone of sadness. Stepping inside, I was greeted by the sight of Sarah for the first time in 5 years. Welcome, everyone from American Travel Solutions Incorporated. The sound of her voice sent my heart racing. Time had only enhanced her beauty. Her lustrous chestnut hair, poised demeanor, and eyes brimming with kindness. She was even more radiant than I remembered. Yet, despite her elegance, there was a faint shadow of fatigue in her gaze. Looking around the facility, it was clear that the vibrant atmosphere of the past was gone. The lobby, once filled with laughter, was now wrapped in silence. A wave of sadness washed over me. Where had the brilliance of this place disappeared to? This way, please, Sarah said as she guided us to a meeting room. She didn't seem to recognize me. Or was she pretending not to? Once seated in the meeting room, Cedric began to speak. Sarah, thank you for making time for us today. His tone lacked its usual arrogance, replaced instead by an overly saccharine politeness. Not at all, I appreciate you coming all this way. Sarah replied courteously, though a subtle hint of wariness was evident in her demeanor. Actually, our company is planning a large corporate retreat. It would involve a banquet for about 100 people. And we'd like to discuss holding it at Celestial Springs. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise at Cedric's proposal. 100 people. Her voice carried both surprise and a faint glimmer of hope. Yes, that's right. Of course, we'll iron out the details separately. Cedric's gaze began to drift downward from Sarah's face. The moment I noticed his lecherous stare, my eyes widened in disbelief. However, there's one condition. Cedric continued, his eyes fixed intently on Sarah. Before we finalize the banquet arrangements, I'd like you to host me as a guest first. A guest? Sarah's voice quivered with confusion. Her expression clouded with unease. Yes, it's customary to assess the atmosphere of the venue and the quality of the owner's hospitality for such a large booking. I'll act as the guest. And I expect you to entertain me with your utmost dedication, Cedric declared smugly. He leaned forward, closing the distance between himself and Sarah, his behavior becoming increasingly brazen. Sarah, seemingly unaware of Cedric's true intent, hesitated. I clenched my teeth, desperate to intervene. But in my current position, what could I do? I see. Sarah lowered her gaze for a moment. Her subtle gesture revealed the inner turmoil she was battling. I'd be happy to consider it, but could you clarify what kind of hospitality you're expecting? Her voice trembled slightly. Cedric, grinning slyly, moved even closer to her. Oh, nothing complicated. Just be a little kind to me, you understand? Surely. You know what I mean. As he spoke, he reached out toward her delicate hand. Cedric. Physical contact is not only against company policy but also crosses a line of basic human decency. I stood abruptly, my voice firm and unwavering. Cedric raised an eyebrow and sighed dramatically before finally stepping away from Sarah. Good grief. It seems this high school graduate doesn't understand the importance of interpersonal relations. Relieved, Sarah let out a quiet breath, her eyes briefly meeting mine with a hint of gratitude. Well then, Sarah, I look forward to hearing a favorable response. Cedric said, his tone oozing arrogance as he turned sharply to leave, not even touching the hot chocolate she had graciously prepared. As I turn around to head home with Cedric's business bag in my hand, I am suddenly stopped by Sarah. "Derek, is that you? You've grown so much." Her gentle words rooted me to the spot. I turned around to see her smiling at me. "Sarah." The words caught in my throat. 5 years had passed since we last met. And even in these circumstances, her kind smile remained the same. "It's really been a long time," I managed to say, my voice trembling. A mix of joy, nostalgia, and guilt flooded my chest. "The boy I knew has grown into such a dependable man," she said, her eyes reflecting warmth and a touch of nostalgia. But I didn't miss the fatigue and anxiety hidden in the depths of her gaze. Looking around the corridor, it was painfully clear how much the resort had changed. The vibrant energy of the past was gone. Sarah, the resort, its state. My words made her expression briefly darken. "Yes, things have been tough lately. But I'm doing my best. I just need to work harder, don't I?" "Sarah, you don't need to pay any attention to what Cedric said earlier. You can refuse such a hospitality request without hesitation." I spoke desperately, driven by a single desire to protect Sarah. "Derek." Sarah let out a deep sigh. "But..." Her words carried a heavy burden of doubt and inner conflict. Her eyes gazed into the distance. "Considering the state of the business, I can't just turn down a major reservation like this." Her voice was strained, almost a whisper. Her words made the harshness of reality painfully clear. I was at a loss for words. Righteousness alone couldn't solve this. The weight of responsibility bearing down on her was immense. I want to protect Sarah and Celestial Springs somehow. This thought grew stronger and stronger in my heart. A few days later, a message from Sarah reached the office. I listened with a sinking heart to what it said. "Cedric, Sarah from Celestial Springs has agreed to the hospitality arrangement." Cedric's face broke into a smug grin. Seeing that expression, a surge of anger boiled within me. "Well then, it's settled," he said, his voice brimming with triumph. I clenched my fists tightly. "Cedric," I called out, summoning every ounce of courage. "What is it, Derek? May I join the meeting?" Cedric's brow twitched with annoyance. "What? You join us? Don't be ridiculous. Having someone like you around would spoil the mood. Know your place." His words were biting, and I gritted my teeth. But I couldn't back down. Throughout the day, I repeatedly approached Cedric, persistently requesting to be present at the meeting. "Fine. But keep your mouth shut." He eventually conceded, clearly worn down by my insistence. "Thank you." I expressed my gratitude, playing along with my enemy for now, as part of a strategic move to protect what's important. "Sarah." I muttered her name under my breath. I couldn't bear the thought of losing that gentle smile. On the day of the meeting, we returned to Celestial Springs. Sarah stood at the entrance, as poised as ever, though I could see a flicker of unease in her eyes. "Welcome." She greeted us, her voice carrying a faint tremble. Cedric approached her with a broad smile, his demeanor nauseatingly sweet. The way he looked at her set me on edge. "Ah, Sarah, I'm looking forward to having a nice, long chat today," he said in a syrupy tone, reaching out toward her shoulder. The moment his hand nearly touched her, I cleared my throat loudly and stepped in. "Excuse me. Could I trouble you for a warm drink?" My abrupt interruption made Cedric freeze momentarily. Relief washed over Sarah's face as she quickly responded to my request. "Of course, I'll bring it right away." While Sarah stepped away, I kept a vigilant watch. I carefully observed Cedric's every move, ensuring to preempt any inappropriate behavior. Each time Cedric attempted to touch Sarah, I intervened, tripping accidentally, asking loudly about restroom locations, or inquiring about the significance of the decor. My constant interference visibly irked Cedric. As time passed, his frustration grew more evident. "Derek, why are you even here? You're ruining everything. Can't you see I'm not enjoying myself at all?" Cedric finally snapped. But I responded calmly. "My apologies, but as a fellow employee of American Travel Solutions Incorporated, I am obligated to ensure the proper conduct of business negotiations." My sharp gaze made Cedric falter for a moment, but he quickly scowled, anger distorting his face. Realizing that raising his voice would compromise his position, he clenched his teeth and restrained himself. "Fine. That's enough. I don't need any more of this so-called hospitality. With this ignorant fool around, I won't enjoy another drink. A deal's a deal. I'll book the 100-person banquet, Sarah." Cedric spat out the words bitterly. Sarah's face brightened instantly. "Really? Thank you so much." Her voice was filled with relief and gratitude, and I, too, felt a sense of relief. This will bring big business to Celestial Springs. It should help management a little. After the reception was over, as I was leaving, Sarah ran up to me and patted me lightly on the back. Her eyes reflected her appreciation. I returned her nod silently. After Cedric returned to the car, I found myself alone with Sarah. The soft light of the evening gently illuminated the wooden deck. "Derek, thank you so much." Sarah's voice carried the same warmth as when she had encouraged me all those years ago. "It's nothing. I just did what anyone would do," I replied, a little embarrassed. When I glanced at her, she was smiling gently. "But having you here gave me such strength. You've always been someone who protects me, Derek." Her words filled me with warmth. So, she remembered. I recalled the time, years ago, when a large spider appeared during one of our family stays. Sarah had been terrified but tried to catch it in the hallway. I had swooped in with a broom and dustpan, ushering the spider safely outside. Or the time I distracted an irate tourist by pretending to trip and hurt myself, diverting their attention from Sarah. The memories brought a smile to my face. You supported me too, Sarah. Without your kindness back then, I wouldn't be who I am today. I thought I saw her eyes glisten slightly at my words. Derek. An indescribable feeling passed between us. A mix of nostalgia and renewal. Sarah. Summoning my courage, I spoke. If it's okay, could we talk again sometime? Like we used to? Her expression softened further. Of course. Anytime you want. Just seeing your face gives me courage. Her words made my heart leap. I'll definitely come back. And, if there's anything I can do for Celestial Springs, I'll do it. Sarah nodded silently, her eyes full of trust. Thank you, Derek. Just knowing you're here gives me the strength to keep going. A gentle light surrounded us. Well, see you soon. We waved at each other, a bit shyly, as we parted ways. Both of us seemed to sense that this reunion might mark a new beginning. A few days later, with the 100-person banquet Cedric had booked approaching, I called Celestial Springs. Hello, this is Celestial Springs. Sarah's voice, coming from the receiver, sounded a little tired. Sarah, it's Derek. Sorry to bother you. Oh, Derek. What's the matter? Her voice brightened slightly. And that small change made me quietly happy. I just wanted to check. How's the preparation going? Is there anything I can help with? I could hear a soft laugh on the other end of the line. Thank you, Derek. You're always so kind. Actually, we're swamped right now with all the orders for the 100-person banquet. Her voice carried both exhaustion and determination. Between food, drinks, and even some new items we've decided to upgrade for this occasion. Everyone's really excited since it's been a while since we've hosted something this big. Hearing this, I felt both relieved and concerned. Please don't overwork yourself. But it's amazing. Your hard work really shines through, Sarah. Thank you. Hearing that from you really gives me the energy to keep going. Her words warmed my heart. Sarah, keep up the great work. I'm rooting for you. Thank you, Derek. I'll call you again soon. Of course. Anytime. I'm always here to support you. Even after hanging up, my thoughts were filled with Sarah. I couldn't be there in person to encourage her, but if this call helped her even a little, I was glad. As I thought about her and the success of Celestial Springs, I sincerely hoped for the best. On the day of the banquet, I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. Was Sarah okay? Had the preparations gone smoothly? These thoughts kept circling in my mind. As soon as work ended, I headed straight to Celestial Springs. Rain started falling along the way, and the sky turned a dull gray. The closer I got to the resort, the heavier the weight of unease in my chest grew. The road leading to the resort was unusually empty for such a large event. When I arrived at the inn's entrance, I was struck by the sight before me. In the rain, a solitary figure stood still. As I got closer, I realized it was Sarah. Sarah! I rushed toward her, unbothered by the rain soaking me. She stood there, motionless and drenched, looking so forlorn that it pained me to see her like that. Derek! Her voice was faint and trembling. Her eyes glistening with tears. What happened? Why are you out here in the rain? Sarah let out a deep sigh before speaking. I got a call from Cedric. Her words sent a chill through me. He said, the 100-person banquet has been cancelled. Sarah's voice trailed off. What do you mean? They cancelled at the last minute. No explanation, no reason. Her words fueled my rising anger. That man. Perhaps he never intended to hold the banquet in the first place. Or maybe, this was his petty revenge for my interference during his so-called hospitality session. Sarah. I was at a loss for words. Standing before me, she looked so hurt, so fragile. The sight of her, drenched in the rain, tightened my chest painfully. What should I do, Derek? We've already stocked so much. Everyone worked so hard to prepare. You've seen how tough things have been for us here at Celestial Springs. That 100-person banquet was like salvation for us. I was so grateful for it. Thinking it might lead to more work from American Travel Solutions Incorporated, or at least provide some much-needed income. But now, with it cancelled, our resort might not survive this. Sarah's voice shook with despair. Seeing her like this, I made up my mind. Sarah, leave this to me. Derek, what are you going to do? Just wait. I'll take care of this, I promise. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. As the ringing continued, my heart pounded in my chest. Good evening, my name is Derek. I apologize for calling so suddenly, but I urgently need to speak with Mr. Yates. Sarah stared at me, bewildered. When Mr. Yates answered, I took a deep breath and succinctly explained the situation, laying out my proposal. Understood. Let's take action immediately. Mr. Yates's resolute reply came, bringing a wave of relief. The next hour felt like a dream. Under Mr. Yates's direction, executives from American Travel Solutions Incorporated, key business partners, and even notable public figures began arriving one after another at Celestial Springs. Derek, what's happening? Sarah's eyes were wide with astonishment. The 100-person banquet isn't cancelled just yet, Sarah, I said with a reassuring smile. Tears glistened in her eyes. How is this even possible? I arranged it as an impromptu holiday event for American Travel Solutions Incorporated. Mr. Yates was kind enough to help pull it together. Sarah was speechless, nodding silently. Guests continued to arrive. And her staff, initially stunned, quickly adapted to the influx, bustling with activity. The resort sprang to life once more. "Derek, thank you so much." Her voice quivered. But this time, it was from joy. I nodded quietly. Knowing I had preserved her smile filled me with a warm sense of fulfillment. The rain ceased, and the skies began to clear. As the banquet went on, filling the resort with lively chatter, I sat across from Mr. Yates in a private lounge. The room, adorned with luxurious furnishings, exuded an air of tension. Minutes later, hurried footsteps echoed in the hallway. There was a knock, and Cedric burst into the room, out of breath. He paused, his eyes widening in surprise as he saw me seated beside Mr. Yates. His shock quickly turned to frustration as he stormed over and grabbed me by the collar. "Hey, you! A mere high school graduate from the countryside has no right to sit next to Mr. Yates." "I apologize, Mr. Yates. I've been trying to educate him, but as you can see, he lacks common sense and doesn't understand societal norms." Cedric laughed nervously, groveling as he spoke, but Mr. Yates had been glaring at him with a stern expression ever since he entered the room. "Cedric, is this how you usually conduct yourself?" His voice was icy, and the atmosphere in the room froze instantly. "Yes." "I'm not sure what you mean." Cedric's voice quivered slightly. Mr. Yates glanced at me before turning his sharp gaze back to Cedric. "I had high expectations of you. Cedric, I've heard that you told Sarah to host you in exchange for bringing 100 guests to her luxury resort, Celestial Springs. Is that what you call proper conduct? And then, after receiving the hospitality you demanded, you suddenly canceled the banquet today. What do you have to say for yourself?" Cedric's face went pale in an instant, but he quickly tried to recover. "That was a business decision." "Oh? So coercing hospitality and canceling without notice qualifies as a business decision in your mind?" Mr. Yates's sharp retort made Cedric visibly panic. "No, that's not what I meant." Cedric stammered and pointed at me. "Yes. This incompetent fool here is partly to blame for the cancellation." "Mr. Yates, you must be misunderstanding the situation." "Misunderstanding?" Mr. Yates's voice dropped lower. "And what exactly am I misunderstanding?" Cedric was at a loss for words. At that moment, I calmly spoke up. "Mr. Yates, everything you've heard is true. The inappropriate demands made of Sarah and the discriminatory behavior toward me." Cedric's eyes burned with fury. "You have no right to speak here. This is a conversation between me and Mr. Yates." "Cedric!" Mr. Yates's thunderous voice echoed through the room. Cedric flinched, visibly shrinking in his seat. "Do you even know who Derek is?" Cedric looked at me in confusion. Well, he's a useless subordinate with only a high school education, as far as I'm aware." "I'm astonished by your complete lack of judgment, Cedric." Mr. Yates smirked coldly. "Derek is one of our most talented employees, a rising star in our overseas branch, and even a candidate for the next CEO." The color drained from Cedric's face. His eyes widened in disbelief. That can't be." Cedric's voice trembled. Mr. Yates continued. 2 years ago, during his overseas assignment, Derek's innovative ideas and exceptional leadership completely transformed our international operations. I listened quietly as Mr. Yates spoke, memories of that time flooding back. The overseas branch I had been sent to was in complete disarray. In the United States, American Travel Solutions Incorporated was a household name, attracting customers effortlessly. But in that country, it was just another foreign company, struggling with poor recognition. The branch had no visitors, every marketing plan had failed, and losses continued to mount. The local staff were not only poorly informed but also lacked motivation. Before we could attract people to travel to the US, we needed to rebuild trust and appeal locally. Why don't we start by creating domestic travel plans together? They didn't like my suggestion at first. The staff members stared at me, saying I was adding unnecessary work, but I didn't care and walked around the area. First, getting the raw information into my head. I jotted down notes on hidden restaurants, scenic spots known only to locals, and other hidden gems. As I spread the countless notes across my desk to create travel plans, the local staff, inspired by my enthusiasm, began contributing their own ideas. The travel plans we crafted together started gaining traction among the local community. As American Travel Solutions Incorporated began to be accepted locally, Sarah's words echoed in my mind. Our staple foods are usually bread, but some people enjoy hearty meals like lamb or spicy dishes even in the morning. Sometimes, they crave rice. And don't forget religious considerations. These cultural differences are significant. Food isn't just a necessity, it's an experience. A restaurant locals love might not suit foreign guests and vice versa. Paying attention to these nuances. That's what I call hospitality. Hospitality, huh? Inspired by Sarah's philosophy, I approached my work with a focus on hospitality. When I revised our travel plans to align with local preferences, the results were undeniable. People wanted to visit sites tied to films, music, or sports, explore nature parks, enjoy theme parks, shop, engage in activities, or even tour universities and consider short-term work opportunities. I see, so that's the trend. This approach led to the first successful U.S. travel plan for the overseas branch. Before long, the overseas branch of American Travel Solutions Incorporated became one of the most popular travel companies in the country. ATS is a company in our country, right? The American Travel Solutions Incorporated overseas branch had become so accepted that some local customers began to make such a mistake. The branch, once synonymous with deficits, was now turning a profit. As I recalled those days, Mr. Yates's proud voice brought me back to the present. That achievement earned Derek a direct recommendation from Mr. Youngman, the overseas branch's president, to be the next CEO candidate. Cedric was at a loss for words, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. However, Mr. Yates continued, his expression turning serious. The American headquarters of American Travel Solutions Incorporated, unlike its branches, has been underperforming. That's why I asked Derek to assess the situation here and propose improvements. I exhaled deeply. With everything out in the open, there was no longer a need to hide. Cedric, I began calmly but firmly. I'm not here just to observe. I'm here to revitalize this company and restore the American tourism industry's brilliance. Cedric stared at me, speechless, his eyes a mix of shock, regret, and fear. I kept my position as a CEO candidate under wraps because I wanted to see the unfiltered reality of American Travel Solutions Incorporated. If everyone knew, they might act differently, and I wouldn't get an honest view of the company's state. That's why I chose to work in the new business development department without revealing my identity. Mr. Yates placed a hand on my shoulder. Derek, I apologize for keeping your true position hidden. But because of this, we identified issues we might have missed. And as expected, you've already presented solutions before the problems escalated. You've done a remarkable job. I nodded silently. To stop Cedric's reckless behavior, I had called Mr. Yates and advised, rather than paying cancellation fees, we should urgently gather stakeholders and executives at Celestial Springs. It would serve as a statement that Cedric's tyrannical behavior has no place in the future of American Travel Solutions Incorporated, while also acting as a significant promotional opportunity by gathering stakeholders at Celestial Springs. Furthermore, Celestial Springs, now a hidden gem of a resort, could potentially become an exclusive partner of American Travel Solutions Incorporated. if we acted swiftly. I presented several factors that would benefit American Travel Solutions Incorporated during my phone call with Mr. Yates. And my arguments proved effective. However, my true intention wasn't merely to improve the company's financial performance or reform its culture. My true purpose. I glanced toward Sarah, who was attentively explaining dishes and drinks to the guests with her warm smile. Have I finally repaid her, even just a little? The proposals I presented to Mr. Yates were not lies. They were indeed quick ideas aimed at benefiting American Travel Solutions Incorporated. However, my true purpose was to protect Sarah's smile. When I turned my gaze back to Cedric, he was trembling, wiping sweat from his forehead with shaky hands. I exhaled deeply, solidifying my resolve. Mr. Yates, I said firmly, I believe this company needs fundamental reforms. Mr. Yates nodded, his expression serious. Agreed. Tell me your thoughts. First, we need to purge the company of its corrupt practices. And to do that, we need to make a symbolic gesture. I turned my gaze to Cedric. Unable to meet my eyes, he looked away. Cedric's behavior isn't just an individual problem. It's a product of the company's flawed culture. Unless we take decisive action here, real reform won't begin. Mr. Yates thought deeply for a moment, then slowly nodded. Cedric, he said, his voice cold and final. Your actions have severely damaged the company's reputation, including harassment, discriminatory behavior, and breach of professional conduct. These are utterly unacceptable. Cedric's face grew pale. Therefore, I'm reassigning you to a new overseas branch. You will no longer be part of the new business development department. Cedric collapsed to his knees, crawling toward Mr. Yates in desperation. Mr. Yates! Please, I beg you. At least let me stay in the U.S. Please. Cedric pleaded desperately. But Mr. Yates remained calm. What are you so afraid of? Derek, whom you look down on, proved himself overseas and returned triumphant. Think of this as a promotion. You'll take a slight pay cut, but since Nepal, your new assignment, has a lower cost of living than the US, your standard of living may actually improve. Nepal. That far away. Mr. Yates, I only speak English. An overseas assignment isn't possible for me. Cedric tried pathetically to argue, but Mr. Yates shook his head silently. Seeing this, Cedric finally slumped, defeated. Cedric, I said quietly but firmly. You've hurt many people with your actions. Your attitude toward me and your reckless cancellation of the banquet have caused harm. You're aware of this, aren't you? Cedric looked up at me. His eyes filled with regret and fear. In Nepal, learn the warmth of human connection and the value of working earnestly. Academic qualifications mean nothing if you have the will to improve. Cedric didn't respond. Whether he could truly turn over a new leaf remained to be seen, but his accomplishments as a department head were proof of his potential. I chose to believe he'd find a way forward. With Cedric gone, only Mr. Yates and I remained in the room. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air as Mr. Yates finally spoke. Derek, that was a tough decision. Yes. But I believe it was a necessary step. Mr. Yates nodded deeply. You're right. This is just the beginning of true reform. I looked out the window, where the sounds of the lively banquet reached us. Mr. Yates, I'll make this company and American tourism shine again. I promise. Mr. Yates smiled warmly. I know you will. I have high hopes for you, Derek. That evening, the banquet was a tremendous success. The smiles of everyone gathered at Celestial Springs strengthened my resolve even further. When the last guest had departed, I stood at the entrance of Celestial Springs. The night sky sparkled with stars, and the distant hoot of an owl punctuated the serene silence. Derek, a soft voice called. I turned to see Sarah standing there, illuminated by the moonlight, looking as beautiful as a painting. Sarah. I found myself at a loss for words. The tension of the day melted away, and I suddenly felt shy. Thank you, truly, thank you, Sarah said, her voice trembling with gratitude and emotion. Tears glistened in her eyes. No. I only did what anyone would do, I replied, feeling slightly embarrassed. Sarah shook her head gently. That's not true. Without you, this resort would have been finished. Thanks to you, we now have regular work lined up with American Travel Solutions Incorporated. And the future of Celestial Springs feels much brighter. You've truly grown into someone remarkable, Derek. Her words filled my chest with warmth. But her voice dropped slightly. Derek, you've become someone so far away from me now, haven't you? Her words took my breath away. Her eyes held both joy and a tinge of sadness. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. Looking into the distance, she continued. You've been thriving overseas, and now you're a candidate for CEO. I heard all about you today from the American Travel Solutions Incorporated people. I realized you've become someone who belongs to a completely different world than mine. Her words constricted my heart. That's not true, I said firmly yet gently. I haven't changed. To you, I'm still the same Derek I was back then. Her eyes widened in surprise. But, yes, my position has changed. But my feelings haven't changed one bit. I stepped closer to her. Sarah, do you remember? I began speaking softly. Do you remember teaching me languages? Her eyes lit up warmly. Of course, I remember. Back then, I stopped by Celestial Springs almost every day. Sarah always prepared a warm meal for me. But it wasn't just that. You told me, Derek, the world is vast, I said, recalling her words. You taught me different languages, ones people actually used in their daily lives. Sarah smiled. It wasn't anything formal or sophisticated. But I remember how passionately you learned. I really enjoyed the time we spent speaking in different languages. The memories of those days came flooding back vividly. The wooden deck of Celestial Springs at sunset. Sitting across from Sarah, sharing dreams, and pretending she was a receptionist while I played a tourist from abroad, practicing various languages. It felt like it was just yesterday. But it wasn't just languages. I continued. You taught me about cultural and value differences, customs, business etiquette. So many things that helped me succeed overseas. Sarah averted her eyes slightly, looking bashful. I learned a lot from teaching you, too. What you taught me shaped who I am today, I said, meeting her gaze with sincerity. When I was working abroad, whenever things got tough or I felt down, I always thought of you. I imagined how hard you must be working, too. I remembered how you used to feed me warm, delicious meals, and that kept me going. Sarah smiled gently. You taught me that respecting other people's cultures is the key to smooth communication, remember? Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Oh my, you even remembered that? Every word you said left a deep impression on me. I continued, my voice steady. Sarah, you didn't just give me knowledge. You shaped the way I see the world and how I connect with people. You taught me what truly matters. And those lessons became the foundation of my values. A gentle night breeze swept between us. I could see tears glistening in her eyes. Derek. Sarah's voice trembled. I'm so happy to see how much you've grown. And from now on, I said with determination, I'll keep growing, holding on to everything you've taught me. And I hesitated for a moment but then gathered my courage to continue. I want to work with you to make this resort in this town a place the world can admire. Do you know why I went overseas? Sarah's expression shifted to one of slight surprise. For career advancement, maybe? Or because you got transferred? I shook my head slowly. Her eyes widened a little more. No, that's not it, I said firmly but gently. Yes, I was transferred. But the real reason I went overseas was to share your hospitality with the world. And to fulfill a promise I made to you when I was a child. Sarah's face reflected a mix of astonishment and emotion. Oh, Derek. I continued, my tone nostalgic. Back when I was just a kid, you used to play with me every time I stayed at Celestial Springs. Do you remember the promise I made then? I said that when I grew up, I would promote this resort to the world and fill it with guests. And as I learned the languages and cultures you taught me, I started thinking, this incredible place and heartfelt hospitality deserve to be known worldwide. I noticed tears welling in Sarah's eyes. That's why I went abroad to share the greatness of what I believed in. And now, it feels like I can finally fulfill that promise. I took a step closer to her. There was one more feeling I had carried since I was young. One I was now ready to express. And there's another reason. I heard Sarah inhale sharply. I wanted to become someone worthy of you, I said, my voice trembling slightly. But I couldn't hold back now. Because I've wanted to marry you since I was a kid. Sarah's eyes opened wide in shock. Derek. But back when I first realized I liked you, I was still a minor. I wasn't fit to be your partner. I couldn't even take care of myself, let alone think about marriage. That's why I resolved to become someone worthy of you. I wanted to fulfill the promise I made when I was a child before asking you to marry me. I've worked so hard, and now I've finally made it, Sarah. Gently, I took her hand. Sarah, will you marry me? Under the moonlight, tears sparkled on her face. But her lips curved into a gentle smile. Derek. Her voice trembled. This is all so sudden, but I'm so happy. I can't say yes to marriage just yet. It's too soon. Let's take time to get to know each other better. But, Derek, if you're okay with it, I'd like to date you. I'm older than you, though. Are you sure you won't feel disappointed thinking I'm just an old woman? Sarah mumbled anxiously, and I hurriedly shook my head. I'd never think that. You'll always be my beautiful older sister figure, Sarah. You haven't changed a bit, Derek. You're still as kind as ever. Her smile was so endearing that I couldn't resist hugging her. I had always loved only Sarah single-mindedly, so my inexperienced hug was awkward, stiff, and embarrassing. And yet, Sarah laughed happily and gave herself to me. Her warm body heat and nostalgic scent enveloped me. You've grown so much, Derek. The night sky was full of stars. It is as if they are celebrating the beginning of their new life together. A year has passed since that night. One day, a postcard arrived on my desk. And I couldn't hide my surprise when I saw the sender. It was from Cedric. The postcard featured a scenic view of Nepal, and his neat handwriting filled the back. Derek, how are you? I'm working hard here at the Nepal branch. To be honest, at first, I felt demoted and was deeply disheartened. But my time here has profoundly changed my outlook on life. I've realized how foolish I was to judge people based on their education or status. I deeply regret failing to see your true worth. Derek, you're amazing. Now that I'm working in Nepal, I truly understand the magnitude of your accomplishments overseas. I'm truly sorry. Reading his words, I felt a mix of emotions. I was glad to see Cedric's growth, but the memories of the past resurfaced. Still, it all felt like a distant chapter of my life now. Keep working hard, Cedric, I murmured to myself. As for me, life had been going smoothly. After the upheaval, I earned Mr. Yates's trust and was officially named the next CEO candidate for the American headquarters. Every day in the new business development department was challenging but fulfilling. "Derek, the new project materials are ready," a fresh-faced employee said as she handed me the documents with a bright smile. "Thank you. It's all thanks to the team's hard work," I replied with a smile. Remembering my own early days, I made an effort to warmly support the younger employees. After work, I hurried to Celestial Springs. Standing at the entrance, I was greeted by a familiar yet fresh scent. "Welcome home, Derek," Sarah said, her gentle smile lighting up the room. Since that fateful day, we'd started a relationship as a couple. Due to the distance, we have to work remotely and always return home on weekends, but we understand each other's busy schedule and support each other, gradually deepening our relationship. "I'm home, Sarah," I said, taking her hand and softly kissing it. "How was your day?" I answered Sarah's question with a smile. It was fulfilling. I've been really enjoying work lately. But the best part of my day is getting to see you, I said, pulling her into a hug. Her cheeks turned bright red as she buried her face in my chest. Even now, her girlish shyness makes my heart race. In truth, I've been planning to propose formally next Christmas. The ring is already prepared. "Derek." Sarah's voice brought me back to the present. "Yeah? Let's keep working hard together." I nodded firmly. "Of course. With you by my side, I can overcome anything." Holding her hand tightly, I envisioned the bright future ahead of us. The further development of Celestial Springs, the growth of the company, and my new life with Sarah. Everything is going smoothly. But this isn't the end. Rather, it's the beginning of new challenges. With that thought in mind, I looked up at the twilight sky alongside Sarah. Tomorrow is sure to be another wonderful day. Judging others based solely on titles or appearances is wrong. That's something I've come to believe strongly through my experiences working abroad. Academic qualifications are important, yes, but they don't define a person's worth. I've worked relentlessly, and now I've been fortunate enough to grasp this happiness. Living with Sarah, I know we'll face unfair challenges again. Even so, I want to remain flexible yet steadfast in my values. Just as Mr. Yates came to understand me, I'm confident others will, too. As I held Sarah close, my heart swelled with excitement at the thought of the life we'd share together. Just leave those lowlifes alone. It's a waste of time. I stared at Gordon in disbelief as he said that. How could he just abandon a blind woman who was clearly in trouble? "I'm heading home. Do whatever you want." With that, Gordon actually left me and the woman behind, driving away in his car. But I couldn't just walk away and leave her there. Looking back now, I can say with confidence that I made the right decision. Because I reached out to help her, I was able to reunite with someone very important to me. I'm Seth. I was blessed with my parents I deeply respected. They were kind, compassionate people who created a warm and loving home. Seth, if you see someone in trouble, make sure to reach out to them. That kindness will make you stronger. My mom often told me when I was young. Both my parents were nurses. They were gentle, empathetic, and always put others before themselves. Growing up with them, I naturally inherited their qualities and developed a calm and caring nature. But our time together was cut short. Just before I graduated college, they passed away in a car accident. A car ran a red light and plowed into them at an intersection. Losing them so suddenly was an indescribable devastation. I was so shattered that I didn't even attend my college graduation. The reality that I would never see them again tore me apart. The morning of the accident, their cheerful conversation keeps replaying in my mind. "We took the day off work. We're both coming to your graduation." My mom was so excited. "Honestly, I'll probably start crying before your mom does," my dad joked as they celebrated my achievements. But the day of the ceremony passed without them or me. I graduated college and, thanks to the house, insurance money, and savings my parents left behind, I didn't have to worry financially as I started my adult life. Even after they were gone, I felt their support. I began working at a major furniture company where I had secured a job offer. I told myself I needed to work hard now that I was on my own. I resolved not to rely on the money they left me. But the job was grueling, with demanding quotas, long hours, and little to no breaks. Eventually, my health started to decline. Still, I forced myself to go to work every day, determined not to let myself falter. One morning, as I arrived at the office, I realized I was drenched in sweat. And my heart was pounding uncontrollably. I rushed to the bathroom, hoping no one would notice. After a while, I managed to calm down, but it became a daily occurrence. Oddly enough, I didn't feel this way on my days off. Only when I come to work, such symptoms appear. Eventually, I reached a breaking point and couldn't bring myself to go to the office anymore. A visit to the doctor led to a diagnosis of adjustment disorder. During counseling, I learned that the sudden loss of my parents and the overwhelming workload of my new job likely triggered the condition. It's often caused by extreme stress. At first, I took a leave of absence and attended therapy sessions. But I felt a constant pressure to return to work quickly, which only added to my stress. Looking back, I realize I was trapped in a cycle of trying to live up to my parents' memory, pushing myself too hard, and causing my own suffering. I couldn't go on like that. I realized I was on the brink of breaking down entirely. So, I quit my job. Losing my income and having to rely on the money my parents left behind made me feel deeply guilty. But first, I needed to take care of my own health, I thought. During my time off work, I often found myself gazing at my parents' memorial photos. They had showered me with unconditional love. And yet, as things stand now, where I was hurting myself, I'd completely fall apart. Before that could happen, I made the decision to leave my job. In hindsight, I believe it was the right choice. The stress from work disappeared, and I felt physically lighter. While sorting through my parents' belongings and organizing photo albums, I slowly began to accept the reality of their absence. Even though the sudden loss of my parents remained a painful truth, I came to understand that everyone processes grief and healing at their own pace. I just needed more time. Taking that time to heal allowed me to slowly reclaim the person I was before their passing. I spent a year at home recovering from my adjustment disorder. After a year of recovery, I started working at Wildwood Brewing Company. It was smaller than my previous company, but it had no quotas, and the benefits were excellent. I had shared my history of adjustment disorder and my year of recovery with Mr. Oakley, the company president, and my co-workers. I was worried they might judge me, but I thought it was better to be upfront rather than risk my symptoms returning and causing problems later. To my relief, Mr. Oakley and my co-workers were understanding. Many of them told me, "Let us know if you ever need anything," which made me realize I had made the right choice in joining this company. However, my manager, Gordon, seemed to dislike me. "You're just pretending to be sick to get special treatment. Depression is just for the weak. Don't get in the way of my work," he once said to me. Despite this, Mr. Oakley and the rest of the team made sure I could work without unnecessary stress. To Gordon, though, this seemed like favoritism. I understood there would always be people who didn't understand mental health issues. But being accused of faking it was hard to swallow. Still, I couldn't bring myself to argue back. After all, I did feel like I was inconveniencing others. Gordon never said these things in front of Mr. Oakley or other co-workers, so no one else seemed to notice his behavior. I could have reported him to Mr. Oakley, but my guilt over feeling like a burden stopped me. Even after a year of working there, Gordon's verbal abuse continued. One day, Gordon and I were sent out together for a client meeting. The meeting went well, but being alone with him, I was bracing myself for trouble. Sure enough, on the drive back, he bombarded me with insults. "You make too many mistakes, you're dead weight, just quit already. And stop pretending to be sick." I kept quiet, gripping the steering wheel, resigning myself to this as just part of the job. Then, near a park, I spotted a woman crouched on the ground with a harnessed dog by her side. The woman wasn't moving. I thought something might be wrong, so I pulled over and ran toward her. Gordon leaned back in the passenger seat, barely glancing over, and sneered, "Looks like she's disabled." Ignoring him, I approached the woman and gently spoke to her. "Are you okay? What happened?" "I'm sorry, I just felt a little dizzy," she replied. She turned her face toward me, but her eyes didn't focus. I realized she was probably blind. The dog beside her was likely a guide dog. The dog stood close to her, calm and silent, without barking at me. Looking around, I saw her white cane stuck in a ditch nearby. The ground around the ditch was scuffed with scratch marks. Perhaps the guide dog had been trying to retrieve it. The woman looked unwell. Given the heat today, it could be heat stroke. She might need to be taken to a hospital or back home to recover. Perhaps she'd feel safer taking a cab, I thought as I went to retrieve her white cane. But as I approached it, Gordon shouted from the car, "What the hell are you doing in this heat? I want to get back to an air-conditioned room already. Just leave that lowlife alone. It's a waste of time." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could he say such a thing about someone clearly unwell? Unable to hide my anger, I gave him a look of contempt. "That's a horrible thing to say, even for you. What's with that look, huh? You can walk home in this heat for all I care. Better yet, don't come back. Just quit already." With that, Gordon climbed out of the passenger seat, slid into the driver's seat, and drove off, leaving me and the woman behind. I stood there, stunned. While Gordon had never been kind to me, I hadn't thought he could be this heartless. I was shocked not only by his willingness to abandon someone in need but also by the fact that this man was my boss. The moment of disbelief passed quickly, and I refocused. My priority was helping the woman. When I asked if she needed an ambulance, she requested a cab instead. I guided her to a shaded bench under some trees in the park and helped her sit down to rest. Nearby, I spotted a small shop and bought a sports drink, a bottle of mineral water, and a paper bowl. I handed the sports drink to the woman and poured water into the bowl for her guide dog. At first, the dog didn't drink, but when the woman gave a command, it eagerly lapped up the water. "Thank you so much, even for buying drinks. Don't mention it. I'm sorry about my boss's earlier comments. They were completely out of line." She shook her head slightly. "It's all right. People like that exist. What matters is that you helped me. Thank you so much. I feel much better now. Do you work nearby?" "I was out here for business. I work at a company called Wildwood Brewing Company." I realized I hadn't even introduced myself. She didn't know who I was, and that probably made her feel uneasy. I opened my mouth to properly introduce myself, but just then, the cab I had called arrived. The driver got out, looking hesitant. "Ah. I'm really sorry about this, but I have an allergy to animals." If I'd known ahead of time, it wouldn't have been a problem. I've had some rough experiences cleaning up after guide dogs before. I understand I'm not supposed to refuse passengers with guide dogs. But could you call and let them know next time? I'm really sorry about this. Scratching his head apologetically, the driver drove off. This was entirely my mistake. I'm sorry. I should have mentioned the guide dog when I booked the ride. That must have been frustrating for you. She smiled at me. You're very kind. It's fine. I usually try to inform people in advance, but sometimes I need to book a ride on short notice. It's not uncommon to be turned away by cabs or shops. I'm used to it, and I understand their concerns. This time, I made sure to notify the cab company about the guide dog, and another cab arrived shortly. As I helped her into the car, she suddenly looked flustered. I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce myself. I realized we hadn't exchanged names. Please, let me thank you somehow, she said earnestly. But I had only called a cab. My boss, who was with her, even said some horrible words that hurt her. I am in no position to be thanked by her. I really didn't do much. Please take care of yourself, I said, closing the door and signaling the driver to leave. When I returned to the office, Gordon was already back. What took you so long? Were you just slacking off, pretending to help someone? I can't trust a faker like you. When Gordon made that snide comment to me, Kayla, Mr. Oakley's wife, rushed in, looking flustered and called for both of us. As Gordon and I entered her office, Kayla, looking pale, said, "Something terrible has happened. Mr. Cadwell of Cadwell Foods, whom we visited earlier today for a sales meeting, had reportedly requested that both Gordon and I come to see him right away. It seems Mr. Cadwell is quite upset. Do either of you have any idea why?" Kayla asked, her tone filled with concern. Gordon smirked and glanced at me with a knowing, amused look. You were the one leading the meeting with Cadwell Foods, right? Did you screw something up? If you've upset one of our biggest clients, well, you're done for. I was confident that nothing had gone wrong during the meeting. Looking back on the entire meeting, I couldn't think of anything I might have done wrong. But what if I had said something offensive without realizing it? The thought made me anxious. Let's go right now, Kayla said firmly. And so, I found myself heading back to Cadwell Foods with Kayla and Gordon. When we arrived at the CEO's office, Mr. Cadwell was visibly furious. I braced myself for a scolding, but when he spoke, it wasn't directed at me. Which one of you called my daughter a lowlife and left her behind? It seemed I wasn't the target of his anger after all. Wait, was it me? Gordon muttered under his breath. Yes, earlier today, Gordon had dismissed the blind woman as a lowlife. Could it be that woman? I started to piece things together just as the blind woman from the park entered the room. You're the one from earlier, I said, surprised. The woman smiled warmly upon hearing my voice. She looked much better than when I'd last seen her, and I felt relieved. Dad! It's him! This is the man who helped me, she exclaimed. So, it was you who helped my daughter, Mr. Cadwell said, his tone softening. Thank you so much for earlier. I didn't get your name, and I thought I wouldn't be able to thank you properly. But when I told my father, he said you were from the company he'd met with this morning. The woman said, smiling. It was clear now she was Mr. Cadwell's daughter. My name is Nora. I'm so glad we could meet again. As Nora and I exchanged smiles, Mr. Cadwell's expression darkened as he turned toward Gordon. So, you're the one who called my daughter a lowlife and abandoned her, aren't you? Your name is. I apologize, Mr. Cadwell. This is Gordon, and this is Seth James, Kayla quickly interjected, trying to de-escalate the situation. Gordon, clearly uncomfortable, kept his head down, looking entirely defeated. He had assumed I was the source of Mr. Cadwell's anger, only to realize he was the one responsible. Wait a moment. James? Are your parents by any chance nurses? Ah, yes, they were, but why? I thought so. That surname is quite rare around here, Dad, it's him. The son of the nurses who used to visit Grandma's house. James. Now that you mention it, I remember. It's been over 20 years, hasn't it? You've grown so much. Do you remember us? Mr. Cadwell asked. As I was trying to remember, Nora said, come on, it's me, Nor. I was reminded of Nor, a nostalgic nickname that evokes playfulness and familiarity. I finally remembered. My parents had visited Nora's grandma as part of their home nursing work. I did not remember it, but Nora's grandma was sick of something. My parents went to her house for her post-operative medical care. Perhaps my parents told her at the time, But her grandma even invited me over to her house to play with her granddaughter, Nora. It wasn't every time, but I did meet the young Mr. Cadwell, and I often played with Nora in her grandma's garden. Back then, Nora was a sweet, fair-skinned girl with a kind demeanor. She had been my first crush. Nora had grown into a beautiful adult woman, and the company was located far from her grandma's house. So the memory did not immediately connect her to that Mr. Cadwell. I remember now. It's been so long. I never expected to meet again like this. I smiled at Mr. Cadwell and Nora. Nora had been able to see back then. She explained that she had gradually lost her sight during middle school due to an illness. Kayla, considering the circumstances, I will let this incident slide because of Seth. His parents were remarkable people who helped my mom tremendously, and now he has gone above and beyond for my daughter. However, I cannot trust in staff who calls others lowlifes and abandons them. Such behavior is unacceptable. And I don't want him setting foot in this company again. Ensure he receives proper disciplinary action. Of course, Mr. Cadwell. We will handle this matter with the utmost seriousness and reinforce our employee training. Please accept our sincerest apologies. Here you go, Gordon. Kayla's prompting brought him back to himself, and Gordon also opened his heavy mouth. I'm very sorry. I had never seen Gordon look so meek. I hoped this experience would lead him to change his ways. Since then our roles at work have reversed. Gordon is now my subordinate. And he's been given tough assignments to learn about humanity, as some co-workers put it. And, well, I've started dating Nora. After that day, we met several times, and our relationship naturally grew closer. One day, during one of our dates, we visited Nora's grandma's house. Her grandma had passed away, but the house had been maintained and kept intact. We reminisced about our childhood memories there. As we walked through the garden, I described to Nora what was around us, what was swimming in the pond, what flowers were blooming in the flower beds, and she seemed delighted by every word. Oh, could this be? In the spacious garden, there was a tree covered with tiny white flowers. Nora grasped my hand, leaning into me as if asking to be guided there. As I led her toward the tree, a gentle, refreshing fragrance filled the air. It's blooming, isn't it? Is it in full bloom? What a wonderful smell! She smiled tenderly. This was the lemon tree we had planted together as children. I remembered how, as kids, we had been disappointed that the tiny sapling didn't grow quickly or bear fruit right away. We had believed it would produce lemons almost instantly. I can't believe it's grown this much, I said. It's huge now, it's been 20 years. So much time has passed, she replied. We stood there, looking up at the tall, thriving tree, feeling the weight of the years gone by. Every autumn, the tree now bore an abundance of lemons. Thinking of how this tree had silently witnessed Nora's growth filled me with emotion. And here we were, back at this place together. I'm so glad I got to see you again, Nora. I have to thank my parents for this connection they helped create, I said. Nora nodded gently, her eyes soft with gratitude. Your kindness hasn't changed, Seth. That kindness made this reunion possible. Ever since I met you again, my world has expanded. Thank you so much, she said, leaning into me. Work is going well, and having someone as important as Nora in my life brings me happiness every day. I still go for regular checkups for my adjustment disorder, but there have been no signs of relapse. Soon, I'll likely be discharged from care altogether. After losing my parents, battling adjustment disorder, and enduring Gordon's verbal abuse, I used to feel like I had nothing to be proud of. But now, I have someone who says thank you to me, just as I am. That is what makes me happiest of all. Thanks to Nora, I've learned to take pride in my kindness, and I've come to like myself more than ever. From now on, I want to use this newfound confidence to become someone who can truly protect and support Nora. My name is Ryan, and I'm the leader of the Thompson Group. Today, my wife and I are attending a wedding. The bride is the daughter of an executive in the Thompson Group, and my wife used to play with her often when she was little. To my wife, she's almost like her own daughter. I can't wait to see how beautiful she'll look as a bride. Both my wife and I had been looking forward to this day, so we arrived much earlier than the reception start time, chatting in the lobby while waiting for the venue to open. Then, I heard someone calling my name. Well, isn't this a surprise? Never thought I'd run into Ryan in a place like this. I turned around, and there he was, Adam. Adam? What are you doing here? Adam was a classmate from my biker gang days. Honestly, I wasn't thrilled to see him. He's such a pain to deal with. So why on earth are we meeting here of all places? What's a guy like you doing here? Well, I'm the father of today's star, after all. Today's star? When you hear the star, you naturally think of the bride, but since it's a wedding, the groom is also one of the main stars. Does that mean Adam is the groom's father? What's with that look on your face? Is it so strange for me to be the groom's father? No. I see now. So Natalie is marrying into your family, Adam. Exactly. You could call it a real jackpot for her. A jackpot? I couldn't help but tilt my head at his words. Of course. She's marrying the son of the boss of the Stevens Group. I see, that explains it. But the Stevens Group isn't exactly a major organization. Compared to them, the Thompson Group is much larger. Even though Natalie's father is just an executive, his rank is far higher. Calling it a jackpot seems a bit odd. Still, bringing this up would only sour the mood on a happy day like this. So, why are you here? Well, I've got a deep connection with the bride. They insisted I attend the wedding. A deep connection? What kind of connection? Well, you'll have to ask her about that. If I pressed further, Adam would surely start spouting nonsense. We've had our share of history, after all. So, who's the gorgeous lady with you? Your wife? Yeah, she's my better half. Man, you say that so casually. Thank you for always looking after my husband. By the way, my wife is the boss of the Thompson Group. Normally, it would be Adam's place to greet her first, but considering the occasion, my wife seemed intent on keeping her position as boss under wraps. After all, not everyone attending today is part of the mafia, so it's better to downplay that side of things. That being said, Adam looks like the textbook definition of a mobster. You know, ma'am, back in our biker days, I challenged this guy to countless duels, but he never accepted even one. I just didn't see the point in pointless fights. Why go through unnecessary pain? See? That's exactly what he always said. It's true. Adam sent me countless challenge letters. They were so intense they almost felt like love letters. Apparently, he wanted to take me down to make a name for himself, but I had no interest in fighting over such petty reasons. So I always brushed it off. So, what are you up to these days? Judging by your outfit, you look like an ordinary guy. Yeah, something like that. I glanced at my wife. Since she was keeping her identity hidden, it wasn't easy for me to bring up the fact that I'm in the mafia. Noticing my hesitation, she smiled warmly and gave me a nod. Well, it figures. A coward like you, who wouldn't even accept a challenge, obviously wouldn't make it in the mafia. But back then, I wanted to take you down and make a name for myself. After all, everyone said you were the strongest. Those were just rumors. Yeah, must have been. If you were really strong, you wouldn't have run away from a one-on-one fight. I could never stoop so low. That's why I'm now the boss of the Stevens Group. Everyone fears me now, the big boss. Good for you. If you ever feel like joining the mafia, come to me. I'll make you one. No thanks, I'm fine just as I am. Man, you're as spineless as ever. So you never accepted a single challenge before graduating? That's right. I just didn't see the point. But you could have easily won, couldn't you? Who knows? My wife knew how strong I was. She couldn't imagine me losing to someone like Adam, and she believed in me completely. Adam, however, didn't like that assessment. He burst into laughter. Lady, no matter how strong your husband is, he's still just a regular guy. I'm mafia now, and there's no one who can beat me. Is that so? My husband's quite formidable, you know. You can't compare a mafia member to an ordinary guy. Take today's groom, my son. He's also in the mafia and will eventually take over the Stevens group. He's pretty tough for his age. If Ryan could take him on and win, I'd be impressed. But that's not happening. He's young, but he's mafia, and that makes all the difference. I wondered what kind of logic that was. I can't imagine my husband losing. My wife seems annoyed by the fact that she thinks I'm weak. She wanted to point out that Adam was far weaker than me, and she was absolutely right. Still, there was no point in arguing here. But Adam didn't seem to feel the same way. Wow, lady, you've got some nerve. Ryan sure doesn't deserve someone as loyal as you. But hey, you've got to face reality. I am facing reality. The truth is, my husband is absolutely stronger than a show-off like you. And honestly, don't you think it's ridiculous to show up at a wedding looking so mafia-like? This is a reception. Your son's going to be embarrassed if you don't dress properly. You've got quite a mouth on you, don't you? Looks like Ryan got soft because he married a beautiful woman. I ignored Adam's attempts to provoke me. After all, my wife was no ordinary woman. Hey, Ryan. Say something. Relax, there's no need to get worked up. Adam kept throwing insults my way, but I brushed them all off, only responding enough to keep the conversation moving. My wife clearly couldn't stand Adam, but I told her not to let it bother her. Finally, the venue opened, and as we prepared to enter, Adam rushed in ahead of us. We laughed, wondering why he was in such a hurry to take his seat. But it turned out there was a reason for his haste. When we entered, we saw Adam standing at our table, marker in hand. I wondered what he was doing, but I chose to ignore it. That is, until my wife froze when she tried to sit down. I looked over to see what was wrong and noticed the name card written on it in marker was the phrase "stinky woman." My wife's face showed nothing but fury. Hey, Adam. Did you do this? Yeah, sure did. You two stink up the place, so why don't you just leave and save us all from bad food? As he laughed, I felt a burning rage take over. I could take insults aimed at me, but directing them at my wife? That was unacceptable. There was no reason to hold back anymore. Boss, should we retaliate? Yes. When I asked if we should retaliate, my wife responded, but it seemed she couldn't quite make up her mind. This is a happy occasion. Let's just let this slide. My wife handed the name card to the staff and took her seat. See? You're admitting it, huh? Yeah, you stink so bad it's no wonder people say it. Adam kept running his mouth. My wife and I ignored him and took our seats, but someone else had been observing the situation. It was the bride's father, David, an executive of the Thompson Group. Boss, is something wrong? David asked quietly as he approached my wife. It's nothing important, don't worry about it. There's no name card here. My apologies. I'll have a new one prepared right away. No need, David. There was a name card. I glared at Adam, who was watching us from a distance. He probably hadn't noticed that my wife was being addressed as boss due to the distance. He was still smirking like an idiot. What's going on, Ryan? It's nothing. It's clearly not nothing. Just look at the boss's face. It was true. My wife's expression was quite severe, Even though she remained silent, her usual calm demeanor was nowhere to be seen. "Tell me, Ryan." "All right." "Boss, is it okay?" My wife gave a small nod. I called over a staff member and had them bring back the name card. This is what happened. When David took the name card in his hand, his expression immediately changed. After all, seeing "stinky woman" written on the boss's name card would enrage anyone. Who did this? I know who did it, but the boss decided not to make a big deal out of it since this is a joyous occasion. So let's not cause a scene. Still, this is unacceptable. A childish prank like this on our boss? Ryan, you said you know who did it. Tell me who it was. I can't let this slide. Calm down, David. This is your daughter's big day. What good will your anger do? I understand, but this can't be forgiven. Who did it? Just tell me, and I'll deal with them quietly. You sure about that? The person responsible isn't exactly someone you can easily take down. There's no one in this venue I can't handle. That's a typical assumption. Ryan, I won't escalate things, but this is my daughter's wedding. I can't overlook this insult to the boss. All right, the culprit is the groom's father. What? Why would he? The groom's father happens to be an old classmate of mine. Back in the day, he challenged me to fights countless times. But I thought it was ridiculous, so I ignored him all the way through high school. That came up earlier, and the boss stood up for me. What do you mean? Basically, the guy sees me as just a regular civilian. Since he's the head of a mafia organization now, he figures I'd lose to him. When the boss heard that, she said I was stronger than him. Well, of course. No one would ever believe there's someone who could beat you, Ryan. Thanks. Anyway, I guess he didn't take that well and decided to pull this childish stunt. Some people never grow up. I see. I understand the situation, but it's still unforgivable. And to think the groom's father will technically be part of my family now? That just makes it worse. Yeah, I get it. It's only natural to be angry when a relative of yours does something like that. At that moment, David glanced around, as if checking whether anyone was looking for work. Meanwhile, Adam stood there, still smirking. Hey, Adam. What? You're the one who scribbled on the boss's name card, aren't you? The boss? No, you've got it wrong. The only thing I scribbled on was Ryan's wife's card. I don't know anything about the boss's name card. Ryan's wife is the boss. What? What do you mean? Both Ryan and his wife are members of the Thompson clan. His wife is the boss, and Ryan is the leader. Is that so? They look like regular people from how they're dressed. That's because it's a wedding, and they're being considerate. The boss is being considerate? At the wedding of a senior member's daughter? That's kind of odd, isn't it? It just shows how kind-hearted they are. Well, it's no big deal anyway. At that remark, David finally lost his patience and yelled. You dare say it's no big deal to insult the boss of Thompson? Enough with your nonsense. He grabbed Adam by the collar, and just as it seemed like a full-blown fight was about to break out, a loud voice rang out. Stop it. This is an important wedding day. Do you really want to stain your own child's milestone with blood? Hearing this, David froze and let go of Adam. Even more than that, the entire room of mafiosi fell silent in fear. After all, it was the boss of Thompson roaring. That reaction was only natural. But Adam didn't look pleased. Having been grabbed by the collar, his annoyance was also understandable. At that moment, the groom's relatives approached and demanded that Adam apologize. However, Adam refused. I'm the groom's father. So what if one of the bride's guests happens to be the boss of Thompson? Like hell, I'm going to be scared of that. More than fear, though, what should have mattered was de-escalating the situation. But for Adam, the humiliation of being grabbed in front of everyone seemed more significant. While some of the relatives were bowing their heads in apology on his behalf, others tried to drag Adam back to his seat, creating a chaotic scene on the groom's side. What's so special about the boss of Thompson? I'm a boss too. If we're both bosses, why should I have to bow? And I'm way stronger than Ryan. Anyway, the groom's father roared loudly. Watching this, I, his classmate, couldn't help but feel embarrassed for him. As all this was happening, the bride and groom made their entrance, but Adam continued shouting and glaring at me. The atmosphere in the room remained tense. Poor Natalie. On her big day, she walked into her wedding reception only to find her father-in-law yelling. Despite everything, the ceremony somehow continued. David kept glaring at Adam, while Adam kept glaring at me. As the reception reached its midpoint, Adam's alcohol intake increased, and so did the volume of his voice. Finally, holding a beer in hand, Adam stormed over to my table. "Hey, Ryan. Why the hell didn't you accept my challenge back then? And now you're part of the mafia? Why didn't you say anything about it? How far are you planning to mock me? Adam, just sit down already. I'm not saying you can't drink, but this is your son's wedding, for crying out loud. That doesn't matter. Now that I've seen you again, I have to take you down this time. I don't even understand why you're so mad. Besides, dragging up some challenge from when we were kids is pointless, don't you think? There's nothing pointless about it. I've spent my whole life dreaming about crushing you. I've even seen it in my dreams. And now, I finally meet you, only to find out you're a leader of the Thompson clan? And on top of that, your wife is the boss? What the hell is going on here? What's going on? I just graduated from high school and ended up joining the Thompson clan. Then I met my wife there, and after we got married, I found out she was the boss's daughter. Talk about lucky. Is it? I didn't exactly look into her family background before we got married. Then why aren't you the boss? My wife had more support from the members. It's better for the group if the person everyone believes in takes charge, isn't it? No, that's not it. I can't accept that the guy I've wanted to take down for so long is the leader, and his wife is the boss. I wanted to beat the strong version of you, but you're just some henpecked husband? That's pathetic. Are you really that much of a wimp? Yeah, I am. I've decided I'll do anything for the boss. So, whatever you think doesn't matter to me. Now, sit down already. But no matter what I said, Adam refused to sit down. Instead, he dumped his beer right over my head. What the hell are you doing? I jumped back, but the smell of beer clung to me. I don't drink beer by pouring it on my head, you know. Well, how about now? Ready to fight me one-on-one? Grow up already. At that moment, the groom, Lucas, came down to stop Adam. Dad, what are you doing? Stop this nonsense, will you? And who are you siding with? It's not about taking sides. Why are you ruining my wedding? This is supposed to be a special day. Then David rushed over. What's wrong with you? First that stunt earlier, and now this? I don't know what grudge you have against Ryan, but you're acting like a child. And who the hell are you? I'm the bride's father. And for crying out loud, you've had way too much to drink. Oh, the bride's dad, huh? If you're the bride's dad, stay out of it. I'm the groom's dad. If you keep meddling, it'll only make your daughter look bad. What did you just say? It was clear that things were about to spiral out of control. At that moment, my wife stood up. David, I'm sorry, but I think it's best if I leave. If this continues, the wedding will be completely ruined. I don't want to make Natalie cry. Boss, I'm sorry. It's fine. Let's go home. Yes, boss. My wife walked out of the venue, her expression cold despite keeping her head held high. I followed her outside and asked, "Why did you leave? There's no point in staying if our presence is causing trouble. Things will probably go smoother without us." "Yeah, I guess you're right. And besides, you reek of beer. You should head home and take a shower." While we were talking, David came running out of the venue. "Boss, I deeply apologize for everything." David bowed deeply, his voice filled with sincerity. "David, it looks like you've married into a complicated family, but hang in there." I said this to him before leaving the venue with my wife. However, after we left, the situation inside took a dramatic turn. Unable to tolerate the insult to his boss and leader, especially as it involved the Thompson clan, David punched Adam. Natalie, distraught and confused about what had happened, started to cry. But once she understood the situation, her confusion turned to anger. She had been visiting the clan's office since childhood and had spent a lot of time playing with my wife. To Natalie, my wife was as dear as a second mother. It seemed she couldn't forgive anyone for disrespecting her. But the groom, having seen Natalie's reaction, wasn't about to stay quiet either. "You're going to be part of my family. Don't you dare insult my father." Natalie, however, wasn't backing down. She was furious about the insult to her beloved boss and the humiliation of me having beer poured on me. In the end, the wedding was called off entirely, and the marriage itself was annulled. Although I was unaware of the fallout, Adam convinced himself that the annulment was entirely our fault. That night, Adam called me, his voice seething with anger and resentment. "Because of you, my son's marriage was ruined." "What? How is that my fault?" "I don't care. After you two left the venue, Natalie's dad punched me. Then my son and Natalie got into a fight, and everything went to hell." "Is that so?" "That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate isn't going to cut it." "But Adam, you were the one who started this by picking a fight with me. On top of that, you scribbled on my wife's name card. Maybe you should reflect on your actions." "I don't need to reflect on anything." At that point, I realized there was no reasoning with him, so I decided to respond nonchalantly. "All right, my bad. What's with that attitude? You're not sorry at all, are you?" "Yes, I am sorry. It's totally my fault. Don't mess with me." "Do you have any idea how much that venue cost? And this is all you've got to say?" "Sorry, but I'm busy. I don't have time to entertain you." Later. I thought that would be the last I'd see of him, but apparently, that was a mistake. Having been brushed off again just like in high school, Adam's anger only grew. A few days later, he showed up in front of me once more. This time, he was holding an old-fashioned challenge letter. "Ryan, fight me. One-on-one. A challenge letter? Seriously? You never change, do you? I can't accept anything less than taking you down. If you weren't in the mafia, I wouldn't have gone this far. But since I found out you're in, it's time to settle who's really stronger." What a pain. Still, I figured refusing would only make this drag on forever, so I decided to accept. "Fine, I'll take you on. After 34 years, your wish is finally coming true. Since high school, huh? I suppose you've gotten stronger now that you're a boss yourself." What's that supposed to mean? Like I was weak back in high school or something? Exactly. I didn't bother with you back then, because I knew you were way weaker than me. Fighting someone who'd go down in one hit wasn't worth it. Don't talk nonsense. I wasn't that weak. I was strong back then, and I'm even stronger now. Sure. If that's what you believe, just don't go down in one punch this time. That wouldn't be any fun. Shut up. You won't be laughing for long. I'm the boss of the Stevens clan. And I'm the leader of the Thompson clan. Does that make us equals? We're not equals. I'm the boss, and you're just a leader. That makes you beneath me. Ah, I see. By that logic, if the guy beneath you beats you, it'll be a real disaster. You okay with that? I told you, I won't lose. Alright, let's do this. Where? There's a park right over there. We'll fight in the park. Thoughtful of you to pick a spot. Nice, nice. Don't mock me. I thought I'd just play along, throw a few punches, and end it quickly. When we arrived at the park, we found a wooded area and headed into it. Getting into a fight in the middle of such a large park would risk someone seeing us and calling the police, which would be a hassle. Here, this spot good? Yeah, this is perfect. Finally, my dream is coming true. The result will be the same no matter where we do this. With that, Adam lunged at me. But his openings were glaringly obvious. It almost felt wrong to hit someone so defenseless. As I dodged his wild punches, I pondered my next move. Taking him down too easily might hurt his standing as a boss. But getting hit myself would hurt, and I wasn't about to let that happen. With that in mind, I backed up against a tree. Thinking he had me cornered, he swung a punch aimed right at my face. I dodged, and his fist landed squarely on the tree trunk with a dull thud. At that moment, I landed a clean punch to his stomach. It must have knocked the wind out of him, because he clutched his stomach and doubled over, only to hit his forehead against the tree trunk, dealing himself a second blow. Still as weak as ever, huh? And now you're out cold. Well, what to do with you now? I can't just leave you here like this. Guess I'll call the boss and David. I pulled out my phone and called the clan office, asking them to send the boss and David over right away. Soon, a black luxury car pulled up, and out stepped the boss, David, and two other senior members. What's this? Why's he passed out? After I explained what had happened, my wife sighed deeply. First, the wedding reception, and now he picks a fight with our leader? What an irredeemable idiot. Exactly. What should we do? David, Natalie's engagement was called off, right? Yes, it was. Then that means we don't owe him anything anymore, right? Correct. He's no longer connected to either me or Natalie. Good. Then wake him up, would you? David grabbed Adam by the collar and slapped him across the face twice, hard. The pain jolted Adam awake. Well, Adam. Nice of you to target our leader, huh? Ah. Thompson. Look, I don't care if you two were classmates, but you're way too persistent. So, you're going to pay a disturbance fee. A disturbance fee? Yeah. I'll let it slide for $100,000. You've got a week to pay up. And you can imagine what happens if you don't. Hey! I'm the boss of the Stevens clan. $100,000 is nothing to me. Good to hear. 1 week. Don't forget. Although Adam had spoken confidently, he was actually deeply shocked by the $100,000 price tag. As we were about to leave, I overheard him muttering, $100,000. What am I going to do? I don't have that kind of money. Adam, who had slumped over in despair, peeked into the group's safe, only to find a pitifully small amount. If he were to take that, it was obvious he'd be in trouble when something urgent came up. Riddled with worry, he returned home and turned to his wife and son for help. Please, I need $100,000. Lucas, lend me your savings. Lucas, Adam's son, didn't seem to share much of a familial bond with him. You've got to be kidding. You got yourself into this mess, and now you expect me to pay? Fix it yourself. Adam, shocked by his son's refusal, turned to his wife for help. But her response was no different. Left with no other choice, Adam decided to secretly borrow Lucas's bank book. However, that plan also failed when his son caught him rummaging through his things. Next, he thought of taking just his wife's wallet, but that, too, ended in failure. These desperate acts only fueled the anger of both his wife and son, and they eventually left the house. Left all alone, with a week left to pay the $100,000, Adam resorted to borrowing from a consumer finance company. Disillusioned with their boss, his crew began to leave the group one by one, and the Stevens gang effectively disbanded, leaving Adam drowning in debt. As for me, I'm enjoying a luxurious vacation with my wife, courtesy of the $100,000 Adam handed over.